Have you ever been arrested by the bunad police? This is the first question I ask the guest in my podcast. And the answers I get are always interesting. I'm wearing a bunad today. And when I do, I always got reactions. Most ask me where my bunad is from, where I am from. I feel festive in my bunad, but I'm also slightly concerned about the self-proclaimed bunad police. This might be, for example, a person with strong opinions on how a bunad should be worn and who may wear one. Given that the bunad police doesn't really exist as such, the reactions to bunad open for the big question: what is a bunad? It is easy to think of bunad as something old, something that our ancestors wore in pre-industrial time. But bunad as such is a modern phenomenon. In reality, the bunad was developed in the 20th century as a way to show a national mindset. Today we have approximately 450 unique variations of Norwegian bunads, each representing national, regional, and local identity. But the misunderstandings surrounding the bunad and the bunad history lay the battleground open for the so-called bunad police. Norwegians are not known to be overly warm or outgoing, but on May 17th, our National Day, we are a joyful bunch dressed up in our bunads. It could be the melting snow or the nice spring weather, the birds sprouting, but in my opinion, it is the bunad that makes this day so magical. When I dress up in my bunad, it is like magic. I feel like a superhero. I'm powerful, on a quest, well-dressed, all at the same time. In other countries, the folk garments, the folk costumes, are mostly used for folk dance. And in Norway, we also use the bunad for folk dance, but the bunad evolved and became a common way of dressing for the big and festive occasions in life. Are you going to a christening? Wear bunad. Are you going to a wedding? Wear bunad. Are you going to graduate? Wear a bunad. The bunad is for the grand occasions in life, where emotions run high. And maybe that's the reason why the busybodies think they can comment on the way you dress. In Norway today, you will find a bunad in almost every closet, wardrobe, or attic. Norwegians wear bunads with huge pride and use large sums of money on it. More than 2.5 million bunads are found in Norwegian homes, to an astonishing estimated value of 30 billion Norwegian kroners. For a population of 5.4 million people, that number speaks for itself. But the value is not about the money. Bunad is bigger than the cost. 9 out of 10 girls are given a bunad for life when they go through Christian confirmation or a similar coming-of-age ceremony at the age of 15. Some might wear their mother's or their grandmother's bunads. This way, the bunad becomes a symbol of family roots. And usually, the boys are not given a bunad at this age, as most of the 15-year-olds have not yet developed an adult physique. And this makes the social pressure easier on them. The idea is that bunad should last a lifetime and be passed on for several generations. My bunad is from a small village called Rindal, 110 kilometers southwest of Trondheim, with 2,039 current inhabitants. This bunad was constructed in 1985 using historical textiles and silver from around the 1830s. Like my bunad, bunads used to be geographically bound. At first, it was national. This became clear during a difficult time. In the 1890s, Norway struggled to become an independent nation. We had been under rule by first Denmark and then Sweden, our now good neighbors. During this peaceful transition time towards independence in 1905, the Hardangerbunad became a way to show a national state of mind. The Hardangerbunad was called the national as it spread wide from the Hardanger region to all over the country. The Hardangerbunad became immensely popular, so much that the future Queen Maud dressed up in one for fun in a photo studio in Bergen while visiting the Norwegian fjords in 1893. At that time, she was Princess Maud of Wales and a part of the British royal family. But she later on married her Danish cousin, Prince Carl. He became the future Norwegian King Håkon VII after a referendum in 1905. The two of them became the foundation of the Norwegian royal house, and this became the beginning of the modern Norwegian nation. What a stroke of luck it was to have those photos of a young princess dressed in the Hardangerbunad when Norway became independent in 1905. Bunad continued to develop. Many wanted to loosen the cultural ties from our former rulers. After the independence, one particular question started to rise. Why should everyone wear the Hardangerbunad to show their patriotism when they had no connection to Hardanger? This started a new trend, and one particular woman became central. Her name was Hulda Garborg, and she had her own agenda: make Norway Norwegian again. But what did that imply? For Hulda, it was all about the independence, and the language, and the folk dance, and the bunad. She used bunad as a search for national identity. She was a journalist and a writer, and she founded a theatre group where the actors spoke a new kind of Norwegian on stage instead of Danish. She imported the Old Norse word bunad from Iceland. And like many other nations at that time, Norway developed a written language based on the different dialects. She also imported the folk dance from the Faroe Islands, and she started a mass movement where Norwegians started to dance, wearing bunads, of course. She and her theatre troupe traveled all around the country, and the movement spread. Suddenly, the Hardangerbunad got competition, as everyone now wanted the Hulda bunad. Had she started a fashion trend? Hulda's bunad was from Hallingdal, but she was a modern and practical woman, so she changed it. And the first bunads were not so concerned about traditions. They were more randomly put together. The basic idea was that the bunad had to be Norwegian, whatever that meant. It had to be national, whatever they found that to be. And it had to be pretty. What a bunad was open for interpretation. She changed the traditional folk garment into something else, something more practical for dancing, something more suitable for her agenda. She got rid of the big and impractical headdress, and she changed the waistline so it got more comfortable to wear. She modernized tradition, and the Hulda bunad was born. Or should I say, developed? In the 1920s, everyone wanted to make their own local bunads to show off local skills and traditions. Many followed the rules given by Hulda Garborg. The wool had to be Norwegian, the dress should have embroidery and lots of it, and the embroidery should be in colored wool. The regional bunad was born. From then on, it has been the common rule that the bunad you wear should be from the place where you're from. It's all about identity. The regional bunads from the 1920s were typical of their time. Hulda Garborg was a grand designer, giving thumbs up or down on the development of new local bunads. As Hulda grew older, she trusted her prodigy, Clara Semb, to continue her life's work. But then the war came. Bunad development became impossible because the Nazis saw an opportunity in the bunad. They saw how the bunad created a national identity and hijacked the bunad to be used in Nazi propaganda. This meant that the bunad could not be used by the Norwegians opposing the Nazis, and bunad development was put on hold. When Clara restarted the bunad work after the war, she had new ideas. The bunad was already established as a modern phenomenon. But now Clara wanted the bunads to be historically correct. She had an idea that the textiles and the silver should be gathered from the same time period and the same location. The bunad should be true to history, and this represented a different take on bunad. Bunad evolved further. In the 1960s and the 70s, Ågot Nås became a real bunad pioneer when collecting, documenting, and photographing old traditional folk garments. She cycled around, asking about the historical use and the traditions. Today we have a large archive with historical textiles thanks to her work. This is available for us to explore in the museum collections. And this is a base for reconstructing and reinventing bunads today. Many believe that bunad is exactly the same as our ancestors wore. But that's not true, or at least it's true and untrue at the same time. Some bunads are actually true to the traditions of pre-industrial Norway. Others are developed following Hulda Garborg. Then again, some are created following Clara Semb. And thanks to Ågot Nås, we have a historical knowledge pool. But for most bunads owners, the authenticity is not about whose ideas their bunads is based on. On our National Day, May 17th, the joy and togetherness feels like magic. This day is a very inclusive one, and I now see a trend where the bunad has become a sign of integration. Wearing a bunad gives, for example, immigrants an opportunity to be included. Some find it hard to always get the question, where are you from? It can feel offensive and be difficult to explain. Norway is today a multicultural society, but wearing a bunad could make you feel included. When it's not easy to explain where you're from, wearing a bunad shows where your heart is. Today, everyone and no one is the bunad police. If your nosy neighbor comments on the way you have your hair or makeup while dressed in bunad, well, she's acting like the bunad police. If someone tells you you're not Norwegian enough to wear a bunad, well, that person is prejudiced and simply wrong. The bunad police is strong in Norwegian mindsets, but remember, it doesn't really exist. Bunad has always served a higher purpose. It used to be an activist way to dress. Also, today, activist movements use bunad to get attentions. The activist movements work for different political issues like nature, climate, and local health care. But you cannot argue angrily with a person dressed in bunad. I would say they are inspired by Hulda Garborg. Time will show exactly how bunad will continue to evolve. But evolve, it will. Thank you.